a congressional race of national importance. Can Democrat John Avlon prevail in a red-leaning Long Island district and help flip control of the House? The Point starts right now. He's got a tough race against freshman Republican Congressman Nick LaLota. Can former CNN commentator John Avlon pull it off? So here's the question. Can you pull it off, given the fact that they gave you a little bit of a problem when they decided to change some of the districts and gave you a few more Republicans than had been in the district before?
Absolutely. We're going to win this. And let me tell you why. This district is a third, a third, and a third. Essentially, it's third Republicans, third Democrats, and the more independents registered in the district than any other in the state. This is a state that's historically been a swing district, as you know. It goes back between Democrats and Republicans, and it's time. And Nick LaLota is far too far right for the district for a freshman.
So, but they've been taking a lot of shots at you. They've been saying that you don't live in a district, you still have an apartment in Manhattan, that you worked for Rudy Giuliani a million years ago as a speechwriter. Why don't you take some shots at him?
I do.
Take your best shot.
Well, how about this? He doesn't even live in the district.
What?
He's the only member of Congress represented by another member of Congress. Between him and me, I'm the only one who can vote for myself on Election Day. He's represented by Andrew Garbarino. And he promised the voters he would move to the district if he was elected, and he never did.
But we have to point out that you don't have to live in the district. He's not like violating a law.
No, he's not violating a law. He's just violating common sense. But he's violating common sense when he cheers the overturning of Roe v. Wade and says states should go farther, or says that, we should lower the age to buy AR-15s, or mocks the bipartisan border security bill. I have a record of working with Democrats and Republicans. I think we need to get things done for folks and stop fighting and start fixing.
So here's the thing. There's a lot of issues we could talk about, but one of the things that I've been interested in is Social Security.
Yeah.
And I think people in your district are as well.
You're damn
because,
right.
as you know, the funding for the Social Security Trust Fund is going to expire. So my question to you is, what's the solution? Is it more taxes? Is it something else?
First of all, I love that you're talking about solutions, because too often in journalism and in our debates, we talk about problems, not solutions. The first responsibility is to keep Social Security solvent, Medicare solvent.
How do you do that?
Well, I think what you should do is raise the cap. I think the cap is too low, and I think right now the Social Security tax cap kicks in at $150,000.
So people will pay more in taxes out of their salary.
What they'll do is pay a proportional amount, even if they make more money than the average worker, and I think that's an issue of fairness in the interest of solvency. There needs to be a reasoning together. There needs to be a coming together. This isn't an entitlement. It's a commitment we have made that people have paid into. And so when you look at things like the Republican Study Committee that my opponent is a member of, that says we should cut benefits, we should cut Social Security, we should cut Medicare, I think that's entirely out of step with common sense and where the vast majority of voters are. This is a commitment. We make our commitments. We do that by ensuring Social Security is solvent.
So basically what you're saying is that people who can afford to pay more in taxes because they're earning a certain amount of money will pay a little bit more so that people who get to be retirement age would get their benefits.
We need to do what's necessary to keep Social Security solvent, but let me tell you this. This is an issue of the cap is artificially low. There are a lot of things that need to be modernized, and ultimately there'll be some sort of bipartisan reckoning and reasoning together, as there should be, around a shared goal. But New York State, for example, is too highly taxed. I think one of the things we need to do, and one of the things I'll commit to do, and the Democrats can do because of the expiration of the Trump tax cuts, is to get the state and local tax deduction back. Trump and the Republicans took it away. Salt. Right? Trump and the Republicans raised our taxes, and they did it out of spite as part of a political stunt. And they can talk a good game, but they're really just too invested in the red state to blue state divide. And it's an issue of fairness. We in New York pay more to the federal government than we get back.
But I have to say one thing. So every single congressman, including the Republican you're running against, have asked for SALT to be reinstated. Yeah. But nobody else, none of the other Republicans in Congress want to do it.
That's the point. He can talk about it. Democrats will get it done. And that's the key difference. And look, it's an average of $10,000 back in working families and middle-class families' pockets every year.
And believe me, I get it.
Yeah, so that's the point. So let's stop talking. Let's start doing. Democrats can get it done. Republicans can talk, but they can't get it done.
So here's the other thing. I'm talking about Social Security. The former President Trump has now been talking about the idea of not taxing Social Security benefits. So we need to point out that actually in the state of Minnesota, my producer pointed this out to me, the state of Minnesota, statewide, does not tax Social Security benefits if a couple makes up to $100,000. Do you think that that's a good idea, that if you're going to get a pension from the federal government, Social Security, that you won't have to pay federal taxes on that?
I think it's an interesting idea, but I think it's one we need to discuss and debate. Look, I think that we need to make sure that the federal government, that we're dealing with our deficits and our debt, and we're keeping Social Security solvent. The problem with taking the Social Security tax away, it's incredibly popular and it understandable, particularly in an economic downturn or crisis. But that actually compounds the problem of the solvency of Social Security. Again, let's do our job, right? Show up, reason together, get things done.
So you think that Donald Trump's proposing that because he's trying to get older voters to come to the Republican side and vote Republican in the presidential election?
Look, Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about the deficit or the debt. He added $7 trillion to the debt when he was president. Not a single Republican said boo about it. They only care about fiscal responsibility when a Democrat is president. The reality is that we've got to come together and reason together. We've got to have a sense of generational responsibility in our politics. That's been missing. We need to create something hopeful on the other side of Trumpism so we can realize that we can reason together, that America moves forward when we work together, and they're common sense problem solving that we can get big things done, like immigration reform, like border security, that I'd vote for on my first day in Congress.
So let's talk about border security, because once when you were at CNN, you actually said that border security was a vulnerability issue for Democrats.
Absolutely.
Do you still think that way? And what do the Democrats have to do to make it a saleable issue to voters come November?
Get it done. Look, I mean...
But what do they get done?
Well, first of all, support the bipartisan border security bill. And my opponent mocked it, right? And I think people understand. You know, he fired off a tweet saying, you know, his 9-year-old could have negotiated a better deal than Republican Senator James Langford. People, I think, realize that Republicans want to fearmonger off migrants. They want to fundraise off those fears, but they don't want to fix it. And I think that's a firing offense. I would support reintroducing that bipartisan border security bill my first day in Congress, because that's something that we can get done and need to get done so it can be signed by President Harris, who said she would sign it. Trump pulled the plug on a bipartisan bill, and people like Nick LaLota took the knee. We need to reason together to get it done, solve the problem.
Are you looking at a solution that's going to limit the number of people who are allowed to come into this country?
Sure, we need to make sure the system works. We need more legal... I'm the grandson of immigrants and a native New Yorker. I care deeply about immigration because it makes our country better. But we need more legal immigration and less illegal immigration. When you say limit, do we need to make sure the laws are enforced, that the asylum rules are in place so that people actually can come in an orderly fashion? Yes, because rule of law is necessary for faith that the system works. But it's also good for the economy. It's good for farmers. We need to create a pathway to citizenship and get the dreamers out of the shadows. That's what comprehensive immigration reform does. That's what we need to do. And I think most people get that. But in the absence of that, as a down payment, let's get border security done first.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what you think about Kamala Harris's pick for Vice President, Tim Walz.
I think it's great. Look, here you've got someone who's been a public school teacher. He's been in the military for 20 years. This is someone who's been a congressman who represented a Republican-leading district, a lot more difficult than New York won, and won it multiple times, and then has been a prairie progressive governor in a way that brings people together. And he's clean. He speaks in a way that's relatable. He talks like a human being, and he's got a good sense of humor. I think all those are great strengths. And so let's go. Let's have an optimistic view for the future of our country again.
So you think now there's hope that the Democrats might be able to prevail?
Huge hope. And I can feel it on the ground. I think the whole turnout model of the election has changed. I think young people are going to be fired up. I think we're going to see incredibly high turnout. And I always believe Trump's water level would be lower than it was in 2020. Because he was president then, and because that was before January 6th. But I think there's an enormous grassroots enthusiasm, and people want optimism and hope, not fear and division. They want to look forward, not get dragged back to the past.
You think Donald Trump is panicking? We have about 30 seconds left.
Yes.
Why?
Because I think he wants the attention on himself. He doesn't give a damn about uniting the country. He's not trying to reach out. And so I think the whole calculus of the election is dependent on a candidate he's no longer running against. But let's focus on not what we're against. Let's focus on what we're for, how we can come together and solve great problems on the other side of Trumpism, rebuild the middle class, and rebuild the middle of our politics. That's what I'm committed to.
So you got 15 seconds left. Tell me how you're going to win.
We're going to win by firing up Democrats, winning over independents, and even a slice of Republicans who understand that Donald Trump doesn't represent what they want, that we're not as divided as our politics make it seem.
And independents are going to come to you.
Because we're going to protect abortion rights, we're going to rebuild the middle class, restore STALT, and make sure border security is implemented.
And that note, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But the conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. Political consultant O'Brien Murray and attorney and political strategist J.C. Polanco are here to chew the fat about another momentous week in politics. First off, the vice president picked a vice presidential running mate, the governor of Minnesota. Good pick, bad pick? How do we feel about it?
I think it was a safe pick. I think she did what President Trump did with J.D. Vance. She went to her base. I said Donald Trump was picking a successor. He was looking at the forward. He was looking forward, not for the win. She was, again, looking for someone that would go to the base at that case. He doesn't want to be president, but he's qualified.
Listen, I still think Vice President Harris's currency is excitement and enthusiasm. And if you saw that speech in Philadelphia, no one is as exciting as Governor Shapiro. Full stop. It should have been Governor Shapiro, in my opinion. It would have been a great pick. But she went with the guy I didn't really know. Can I tell you, maybe because I'm a New Yorker, I didn't know Governor Walz. I hope he gets more exciting and I hear more about him. But he has to be introduced to the country.
The two of them gave a great speech. I saw that. But also, I think the thing about Shapiro, she made the right pick because it was for her. I give her all the credit in the world for that.
Why didn't she pick Shapiro?
I think the stories we hear about is Shapiro was not chosen because he wanted to define what the vice presidency was going to be, versus the man she picked said, what do you want it to be? I'm willing to follow and do that.
But was
we just don't know.
Concern about his support for Israel?
I don't think that weighed into it. I don't.
Come on, Obi. Obi, you know very well that there are parts of the Democratic Party right now in the base that are very, very much against Governor Shapiro. And do you know what's sad about that whole thing? Do you know what's really sad about it? That if you were to close your eyes and hear the comments about Israel, they were exactly identical to Governor Walz, Senator Kelly, and Governor Shapiro have exactly the same talking point when it comes to Israel and defending Israel. And they go get a college essay from the year 2000.
And therefore, what I'm saying is she chose someone that would follow her, not compete with her.
Maybe she chose somebody who would do no harm.
Well, that's the hope, too.
Yeah, but you can't go safe with your Vice President Harris. It's about 270 electoral votes. Listen, I'm not saying I'm against the Governor Walz pick. I'm making an argument that her currency, why she has over $300 million today, why she's so entertaining and filling stadiums, is her excitement. Does Governor Walz, he makes you feel safe. He's your coach. You can have a beer with him. I keep hearing all this stuff. He reminds me of my teachers at Fordham Prep. I get it.
It was an airplane hangar, don't forget. The one that did yesterday. It's not quite a stadium. It's a great picture.
I know.
It's a great picture. It's a lot of excitement. But she picked someone to do no harm. But now his military question, did they properly vet him in a short amount of time? The New York Times this week...
Explain what you mean.
Sure. The question, I was in the military. I never served in combat. I've said that any time it comes up, whether I'm talking to someone privately or talking to the media, making sure it's out there. The words he uttered about carrying a weapon into combat, and the fact that he was a command sergeant major, he got the promotion, he had to still go to school and finish out what he had to do in the rank, but then he retired 2 months before his unit deployed. I find it very hard to believe he did not know they were going to deploy. The years they were talking about, we're talking about when you knew months in advance what you were going to do before you got your orders. The question is,
that going to hurt him?
If that is the case, that will hurt him. He left his troops when they needed him most.
He did not leave his troops. He served a generation in the National Guard. And you are contrasting that, right? You're saying that that's negative. You literally have a draft dodger running for president of the United States on the Republican ticket. Someone who said, my shin's hurt. I got things to do. I can't go to Vietnam. Well, we lost 57,000 Americans. Are you going to tell me that that's going to be an issue for Americans? The fact that he left.
I said,
give me a break.
It was a safe pick until this issue came up.
This is still a safe pick. This is not an issue.
When President Trump's press conference is taken in its totality, when the viewers see this and they watch you all weekend and everything else like that in your station, what are they going to take on the view of what he says about that issue and others? And to defend this, at some point, the vice presidential pick is going to have to go on an interview with you or somebody else and answer that question. That's very tough to do right now when the top of the ticket isn't doing those interviews. The campaign is running fantastic.
It's not an issue.
They've got a lot of energy. This is now becoming a speed bump. The question is, does it become more?
No,
that's my question.
I think the Trump campaign wants it to be a speed bump. It's not a speed bump.
It's definitely a speed bump.
How? How in the world? The man served a generation in the National Guard while the Republicans literally have someone who's been convicted and is a draft dodger. No, draft dodger. What are we talking about?
Whoa.
My shin's hurt. 57,000 Americans died. My peers died in war. I choose not to go. And you're going to tell me that because he mentioned that he had guns in combat, somehow that's an issue?
Says the gun,
tell me about
the weapons
why didn't he
I saw the videotape.
I understand.
The weapons I carried into combat. The question is where they're going to clarify that. Right now, the campaign's trying to clarify it. What I've said on this show before, one of the things that Donald Trump did so well and articulated in 2016 was he stood up and spoke for himself. They spent $1 million on air. They spent $1 million on air and say something about him. He said it's not true.
And articulated are things that should never go before the word Trump. Nothing that he articulated in 2016 made any sense, and he's a draft dodger.
How much money was spent saying he was pro-choice, and that money got gobbled up and disappeared, evaporated when he said he was pro-life? We all saw that, what happened up there in New Hampshire, and it didn't have an impact because he said the words himself. He changed dynamic. The vice president
You wanted to be an issue, Obi. It's not going to be an issue. The man served in uniform for his state of Minnesota as a member of the National Guard for a generation.
So
if that's an issue, give me a break.
Question. She's got a lot of momentum now. Do you think she can keep this momentum for the next 90 or so days until November?
Of course, you have the Democratic National Convention coming. You know there's going to be an ode to President Biden. It's going to be a lot of excitement. There's going to be another honeymoon. It's going to be honeymoon 2.0, heading right into the last...
But how long can a honeymoon last?
What I said last time on the show was that the campaigns are going to have to get their arguments together about how to fight. And the Trump campaign has been slow at doing it right now. They've given her a lot of runway. Will they be able to stop her and spend money and get on message? It seems that they waited to determine who her VP pick was before they went and did that. Now they're going after the VP pick to try to slow them down and put the speed bumps in there. I used to call it in the campaign throwing sand in my opponent's eyes. If I throw sand in your eyes, it doesn't hurt you, doesn't maim you, but it does make you wash your eyes out, take a breath, and figure out what to do next. Is this just sand in the eyes, or will they spend a lot of money behind this or other issues? And
when you say this, Obi, do you mean like a Swift boat campaign against the vice presidential candidate?
President Trump's campaign manager ran Swift boat.
I understand.
So Chris did that before. There's a lot of opportunity here against the vice president.
It's not 2004. It's 20 years ago. Things have changed. And I'm telling you now that you cannot make the argument when you are running a draft dodger for president. Talking about a National Guardsman.
But don't forget, they vote the top of the ticket. I think what this did was this neutralized the tax on J.D. Vance, and now the vice presidential picks.
Does former President Trump and Kamala Harris, do they ever debate?
Of course. They have to debate. They owe it to the country. They owe it to the... We need to see them to discuss the
He said he's dropping out of the ABC debate. He wants to do it on Fox. Will they ever actually debate?
I think it's a no-brainer. They have to debate. There's no other way. It has to happen.
He said, I think recently this week, that he is going to debate. They're going to figure out details. He put that out there. She didn't bite. We'll see where that goes. But right now, the fight is in between the two of them and how progressive they paint her, if they can paint her as progressive, put the money behind it. There's 100,000 votes.
Excuse me. He is trying to paint her as a communist.
That's ridiculous.
Does that mean that word mean anything to anybody anymore?
I think the question is what the polling says, and I don't think he's looking at the polls.
I think communist really is
do you think that's
loud.
A legitimate attack? She's a communist?
Well, independent voters know what they are. Well-informed voters know what a communist are, and that's a low-hanging fruit attack on a Democratic candidate for president. You can't attack her with that. She's a former prosecutor, former U.S. senator. She's not a wacko communist, and it's going to be hard to paint her as such. The problem that you're going to have as you continue defending Donald Trump on one of the most popular programs in New York, you have to remember that he's still a convict, he's still a draft dodger, and no matter what you tell me about her being a communist, she could easily deflect that by saying, I was a prosecutor.
I am calling this the way I see the campaigns being run. I'm not cheerleading on one side or the other. I'm just calling it the way I see it, and you know that.
Well, as much as I love to continue this, we're going to have to leave it right there for now, but we'll be right back with more. Thank you for joining me. We are talking trash and what New Yorkers think is a fitting punishment for litter bugs. They're weighing in on your point. How do you feel about litter?
I can't stand it.
Litter?
Yeah.
I hate it.
Oh, it's disgusting.
Nasty and dirty.
Oh, I hate litter.
You hate litter?
Yes.
Why?
Well, it's obnoxious. I mean, look at this.
It's a good thing to have litter.
It's good to have litter?
Yeah.
Why?
So somebody can have a job to pick it up.
It's disgusting. New York is disgusting. I'm from Canada, and it's clean.
I don't litter myself, except I smoked for 20 years and I threw all those cigarette butts on the ground. I'm ashamed of that.
You are?
Yeah. So I make it a point not to litter.
Do you think there's more garbage on the street or less than there used to be?
Oh, I think less than certainly a couple years ago with COVID. It was really a mess.
I think there's less.
Less, I think. Yeah, it's my observation.
More.
Depending on the area, but I live in Brooklyn and it's definitely more.
More?
It feels like it.
I think there's more.
Why do you think that is? People are pigs?
People are not pigs. They just don't care.
People are just really, really disgusting. I mean, you know, people are just spitting everywhere.
They don't clean up. When they sit and they eat and drink, they don't clean up behind themselves.
There's big garbage cans everywhere. Why can't you just put it in there?
Why do you think people litter?
They don't care.
Absence of care and a lack of ownership.
They're lazy.
They're lazy.
Or there are not enough trash cans on the corners.
Too lazy to put it in the basket.
Frustrated, yeah, frustrated.
Laziness and not enough recycling around and not enough cans around, but mostly laziness.
Some people are just like that.
Okay.
Yeah, some people are just like that.
So should litter bugs be punished?
Yes.
Sure, doesn't everybody think that? Again, these are like, this seems obvious to me.
When I see a dog owner allow the dog to defecate and not pick it up, that should be punished.
What kind of punishment?
Fines.
A ticket.
In Canada, where I come from, you get a ticket.
Really?
You get a ticket. Yeah.
How much?
I don't know what it is now, but before you got a ticket, like $50.
No kidding.
Yes, like $75 or $100.
Public display of their name, their business.
They should go into jail.
Really?
For like at least one day.
Small fine is enough.
I wouldn't go that far, but, you know, we should all be considerate about the environment and others.
I think they should be taught the right thing.
Good idea.
But I don't like to punish people.
What should the punishment be?
Oh, that's a good question. Picking up litter.